On today's show, it sounds like Dean Wade is going to be the guy to fill in for Max Strus in the starting lineup for the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think that makes sense, but it's something the Cavs have to stick to. I'll tell you why on today's edition of Locked on Cavs.
You are Locked on Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my new Substack, The Inside Shot, 92.3 The Fan, Cleveland Magazine, and a number of other stops along the way. I want to say thank you to you for making Locked on Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review as well. Help me grow the show. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked on Cavs. Also, check us out on YouTube. Just search Locked on Cavs on YouTube. If you're watching this video right now, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked on Cavs content, a proud part of the Locked on Podcast family, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. So we are now a few days removed from the Cavs announcing Max Strus going to miss at least the first 6 weeks as he recovers from an ankle injury that was suffered last Thursday during a workout. The Cavs had practice yesterday. Kenny Atkinson and Donovan Mitchell spoke. And of course, one of the biggest topics was, well, who is going to fill in for Max Strus in the starting lineup? Because that was something that the Cavs had a lot of volatility with last year, where there were only 28 games that the starting group played together last year. That ideal starting five, of course, Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Max Strus, Evan Mobley, and Jarrett Allen. We know that's not going to be the starting five to start the season because Max Strus is going to be out for some time. So I think Dean Wade is going to be the guy that's going to get the starting nod on opening night in Toronto against the Raptors, but I'm not positive it's going to be like that. I don't know how many options the Cavs are seriously considering to be in that starting small forward spot. Obviously, Dean Wade is one of them. Caris LeVert is another guy that Kenny Atkinson brought up as a potential fill-in for Max Strus that could be plugged in spots. I think Isaac Okoro makes a ton of sense. And because of what Kenny Atkinson said during the first preseason game, Sam Merrill is another name that comes to mind, although I think that's pretty unlikely. But I do think it's going to be Dean Wade. And I think what the Cavs like about what Dean Wade can bring to that starting lineup is, one, defensively, they're very big now. Dean Wade is a really good defender. Having him on the floor at the same time as Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen, I think is going to create tons and tons of problems for opposing offenses. There are some questions I have about how that group looks, but I think defensively, for the most part, there are not very many teams that's going to give that starting five trouble. I think it's going to be something that's very difficult for opposing teams to solve because Dean Wade is good. I think he's versatile defensively too, and he's somebody that's going to be in the right place at the right time. The issue with that is if the other team's best player is a smaller guard, Dean Wade might not necessarily be able to defend that guy, where I think Max Strus could. So you might be seeing the Cavaliers having Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell put in a more difficult position defensively if Dean Wade is the guy that is filling in the starting lineup in that particular lineup. Obviously, this is not a full 48-minute thing, but it does have ripple effects that are going to affect other lineups that the Cavaliers will be employing, because when you pull Dean off the bench, that bench is going to look different. The rotation might have to get a little bit longer. Like, there are a lot of things that go into this, but adding Dean Wade to the starting lineup adds size. I think it should improve rebounding for this team on both ends of the floor. Max Strus is an okay rebounder. I think because Dean Wade is bigger, he should be a better rebounder. And the Cavs just traditionally, at least in the last couple of years, have not been great on the boards. At the guard spots, I know Donovan's good for a few. Darius can kind of be hit or miss, and on the wings particularly. Like, that's one of the reasons why I'm enticed by Jaylen Tyson, and I will talk about him coming up a little bit later on today's show. but that's one of the reasons why I think he's a very interesting, maybe now he's going to get playing time to take over some of Max Strus's minutes, not being in the starting lineup, but might take over some of Strus's minutes because of that rebounding aspect. The other thing that this does, and I mentioned rebounding more so on the defensive end of the floor, but the Cavs have talked, Kenny Atkinson specifically, has talked about wanting to improve how well this team is at offensive rebounding. They crashed the glass relatively hard. I thought during the preseason, it wasn't all that successful. I don't think this is something that you can just flip a switch on. Like, I think that this is something, it's going to take time because offensive rebounding, yeah, a lot of it is hustle and grit, but there's an art to it. There's a skill to it. Like, just because you try really hard to do it doesn't mean you're successful. There's a way to do it correctly, and it's something that you have to learn. You have to figure out. The Cavs aren't there yet. It's not fair to expect them to be there yet, but having Dean Wade with this group could be a move that gets them closer because now they've got size. That said, the other side of that coin is, well, if they're attacking the offensive glass, what's that doing to their transition defense? Where if they're not grabbing those offensive rebounds, they are then susceptible to getting beat down the floor and losing those races down the court, giving up easy baskets, and the defense is suffering because of it. I don't know that the Cavs can play at the pace they want to play at, be a good offensive rebounding team, and be a really good defensive team. Like, I just don't know that those three things combined is something that's possible to pull off. The other thing that I do like about having Dean Wade in with this group, if that is the direction the Cavs are going to go, which I think it is the direction the Cavs are going to go, is a lot of the conversation around Dean this preseason has been, well, he's a really good shooter, but he doesn't shoot the basketball enough. And I think that with this group, I don't know how drastically his number of attempts are going to go up, but I think the quality of looks that he's going to get while playing with three guys that are, I think, pretty capable playmakers. And that's nothing, that's not to downplay Jarrett Allen as a passer. I just don't think the Cavs are going to put him in positions to where he's, searching for open three-pointers. But Darius Garland, very good at that. Donovan Mitchell, very good at that. Evan Mobley, I think, getting very good at that type of thing. So I think Dean Wade is going to, if he's willing to take these shots, and he needs to be willing to take these shots, and that is something, he took, I think, 7 threes against the Bulls in that last preseason game. We need to see that go into the regular season. Like, we need to see that when the games count. But if that's what he's going to do, this is a really good group to do it alongside of. Because the quality of looks that he's going to get, just because so much attention is going to be focused, we know, on Donovan Mitchell. Darius Garland's going to have the basketball in his hands a lot. I think Evan Mobley is going to have a great start to the season, and he's going to draw a ton of attention. Teams are going to forget about Dean Wade because they're going to have to forget about Dean Wade. The Cavs are going to have somebody open on the court because of how much attention other guys are drawing. I think Dean Wade's going to be that answer. Like, if you are coordinating an opposing defense, you're going to say, okay, we're not going to be able to put all of our attention on Dean Wade because how can we? And we have so many other things to worry about. So that is going to lead to Dean having the best opportunities as a shooter that he's had in the NBA. So I do think that is one of the benefits to this. Now, the negative to this is what I talked about earlier defensively. Like, if, for instance, when the Cavs play a team with a really dynamic guard, say, Milwaukee is on the schedule coming up in a little bit. Normally, Max Strus would be the guy who, for the most part, would, and maybe that's with Chris Middleton out, which, he is right now. Max Strus would be the guy that would be defending Damian Lillard. Now, Dean Wade, I don't think a great matchup there. There are other areas you can put him, but that means that Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell is going to be tasked with having to defend Damian Lillard, and that's not the easiest ask. That's a relatively tough ask. Where in a game like that, maybe it makes sense to have someone like Isaac Okoro in the starting lineup, or changing things, maybe Caris LeVert even. But is shifting the starting lineup around frequently on a matchup dependency a good thing for the Cavaliers? I'm not so sure that it is. We're going to talk about that next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. I tell you about FanDuel all the time because FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. And the season is starting, and you can start the season big with FanDuel because right now you can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet with FanDuel. Maybe it's on something I'm going to talk about later on the show. We've got awards odds out on FanDuel. Donovan Mitchell, MVP, Donovan Mitchell, Finals MVP. You can get that at FanDuel right now. And if you place your first $5 wager with FanDuel, you are going to get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, as basketball returns tonight, there are NBA games that count tonight. If you're watching or listening to this on Tuesday, or if you're watching or listening to this on Wednesday too, hey, there's basketball being played tonight too, so that still counts. But if you get a hunch in the middle of the game, FanDuel's got the latest stats, live play-by-play, so much more. Same page where you're making your bets. So head on over to FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book for a reason. And right now, America's #1 sports book is hooking you up with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So head on over to FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com today. And you can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Again, FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Also, if you're watching us on YouTube right now, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. If you missed it yesterday, did a little bit of a whip around previewing the first 3 opponents for the Cavs this year, something I want to do every week. So you're not just being informed and entertained about the Cavs, but you're learning about who the teams are going to be playing from the folks that are watching them every single night. I like to watch a lot of basketball. I'm trying to watch as many teams as I can on a weekly basis, but I can't watch every game. So I want to talk to the folks who can watch every game, the experts on those local teams. That's what that episode is for. If you missed it, go back, check it out. But Max Strus being out for 6 weeks has a lot of ripple effects. One of them is the starting lineup. I think Dean Wade is going to be the guy that gets to start tomorrow night against the Toronto Raptors on opening night. But I don't know that Dean Wade is going to be the guy that starts every game Max Strus is out. To me, with what Kenny Atkinson said at practice on Monday, to me it sounded as if they're considering having this starting spot be something that is sort of matchup dependent, where they can have different guys on different nights depending on the opponent. Maybe if a team is a little bit bigger, Dean Wade plays. Like, you look at Toronto where it feels like every single player the Raptors has is like 6'8" or 6'9", so Dean Wade might make sense there. But if you look at a team that has maybe they're more dynamic offensively in the backcourt, it might make sense to have somebody else in there that's a little bit smaller that could handle one of those backcourt elite level scorers. I don't know that this is the best idea. While I understand it, where you want to be prepared going into each and every game, I think it can be a difficult thing for NBA players to bounce back and forth between roles. Like if one night Isaac Okoro is starting, and then the next night Dean Wade is starting, and then the next night Caris LeVert is starting, that is something where it can screw up the rhythm and the routine for 3, 4, 5, 6 different guys, because it changes not only the starting lineup, but it's going to change some of the bench lineups you see. It's going to change the routines of players. It's going to be something that changes quite a bit. And that is the one thing that I worry about, not because, on certain nights it doesn't make more sense to start Caris LeVert than it does Dean Wade. It absolutely does. But is the starting lineup that important where it makes the most sense to have someone like Caris LeVert in there instead of Dean Wade for the first 5 minutes, instead of being able to keep the lineups as they are and keep these players in routine and having the ability to sort of know what to expect when they check into the game for the first time, or know what to expect when the game starts? I don't know that it's worth it, especially when you think about a player like Caris LeVert, who has gone on record in the past as saying, you know what, when I'm first in the game, whether that's the opening tip or coming off the bench, likes to be able to have the basketball in his hands early on, likes to be able to find a rhythm early on. If he's playing alongside Donovan and Darius, and Evan Mobley for that matter, I think that's a difficult thing for him to be able to do. Where Dean Wade, I think it's a little bit easier for him because he just fits in as somebody who doesn't need the basketball in his hands a ton to be effective offensively, where I'm not sure you can say the same thing about Caris LeVert. I think Isaac Okoro makes sense in that starting role because he doesn't need the basketball a ton offensively to fit in, and he can defend the dynamic backcourt players I've been talking about. Those are the types of players that you would want Isaac Okoro on instead of Dean Wade. That said, is it worth having those ripple effects that need to be balanced every night? Because yes, it's one thing to be able to change the starting lineup and get off with the group that you want on the floor at the start of the game. I get that. But so much more needs to be accounted for to where then, okay, well, if starting lineup changes, the group that is probably led by Caris LeVert coming off the bench, if Caris is in the starting lineup, that group is going to look much different. Or if Dean Wade is playing starters minutes, is he going to be able to play the backup five? How much backup four is he going to play? Is he going to be playing 3 different positions throughout the night? I think that there are a lot of things that need to be thought of when you're going through this exercise of trying to figure out what the rotations are going to look like. Max Strus is a very good player. I don't think Max Strus is an irreplaceable player for the Cavs. I do think that they have the depth to sort of piece together his production and his on-court impact. Obviously, the Cavs are a much better team when Max Strus is available and playing well. But I just wonder, what are all of the ripple effects this is going to have? Another ripple effect that I do think this could have is I think Jaylen Tyson now might be somebody that finds himself in the rotation on opening night. I don't think I felt that way prior to the Max Strus injury, but I think this is something that opens the door for Jaylen Tyson to get a chance as a rookie on opening night in Toronto. I think that he was probably going to be the 12th guy, where Kenny Atkinson has talked about playing 10, maybe 11 guys. Kind of thought Jaylen Tyson was 12th. Now, Jaylen Tyson might go to 11th or maybe 10th if you want to say, maybe Sam Merrill is that 11th guy that can play some nights, might not play. But with what Jaylen Tyson brings and what they're losing from Max Strus, especially in terms of rebounding, I think that now there is a role for him. I don't know how big that role is going to be. I don't know how many minutes Jaylen Tyson's going to play. It could be something where he's on the floor for 10 to 12 minutes a night, but he's going to have an impact defensively. He's going to have an impact rebounding the basketball. Maybe he's going to knock down a shot or two. Maybe he's going to ensure that the Cavs play at a little bit of a higher pace on some of those bench units that he could be part of. But I think that this is something that opens up the door for him to be on the floor, where I don't know that there were just minutes available. And it's not because he's not good enough, but the Cavs have a ton of depth. So having him is something that I do think is very helpful to the Cavs right now, with the rebounding in specific, because every time I've seen Jaylen Tyson on the floor in game action, it feels like if there's a loose ball available, that's the guy that's coming up with it. And that is the place that you want to be as an organization, as a team. You want to have that guy on your side. And I don't know if Jaylen Tyson is going to be great at anything in the NBA, but he's somebody that, in what we've seen so far, looks to me as if he's going to be somebody that at the very least, he's going to be the guy that you love to have on your team, and you kind of can't stand playing against him because that guy always figures out a way to get the job done. That's what I've seen from Jaylen Tyson so far, and everyone speaks, so highly of his work ethic. Like at Monday's practice, the last player to leave the floor was Jaylen Tyson. That is kind of happening on the regular. Like that is the thing that we see almost every time we're in the gym is Jaylen Tyson's on the floor. He's one of the last ones in every night. That is something that I do think matters for this. So maybe he is going to start to get some minutes with Max Strus out. And if Jaylen Tyson does get minutes with Max Strus out, I would bet that when Max Strus is back, Jaylen Tyson is going to keep getting minutes, because I just think he's going to be a player that positively impacts the game, even if maybe offensively he's not quite all the way there yet right away. So we will have to wait and see what the rotations look like, what the starting lineup looks like. But to recap, I think Dean Wade going to be the starter for the Cavs. I think that they're still going to try and go 10 or 11 deep. Maybe Jaylen Tyson is going to get those minutes. And I don't know that it's the best idea for the Cavs to rotate who's starting at the small forward spot, but we will wait and see just what that looks like. Again, the Cavs are almost back in action. We're going to see what a new starting lineup looks like tomorrow. But NBA awards season, or at least NBA awards preview season, it's here. Cavs have a few guys on the list at FanDuel. Let's talk about them next, right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by BetterHelp. What is something that scares you? You don't have to say it out loud, but maybe say it in your head to yourself. I'll give you a couple seconds to figure out exactly what scares you, whether it's a big or small thing. You know, Halloween is almost here. We're like 8 days away, 9 days away, whatever. I'm not great at math. Maybe math is something that scares you. I don't know. But Halloween is something that allows you to have fun with the things that scare you. And some of those fears might not include, ghosts, zombies, clowns. I don't know, just scary things. They might, be some real life things that scare you. And if that is the case, then therapy is a great tool for facing those fears and finding ways to overcome them. Because sometimes the scariest thing, it's not facing your fears in the first place, but it's holding yourself back. That can be a very scary thing. And therapy can be a great way to get over that. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It is designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and you will get matched with a licensed therapist. Plus, and I think this is a very important, very good thing about BetterHelp, you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA, and you can get 10% off your first month. Again, overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. If you missed it too, we have started now newsletters here at Locked On, where every day in your inbox, you can get a newsletter from me where it's going to have the episode, a little bit of a write-up from me as well, a national NBA story, some fantasy basketball advice, which, if you're a big fantasy basketball player, very important, plus kind of an in case you missed it thing. So there's a link in the description. Make sure you check that out, but sign up for the Locked On Cavs newsletter. I promise you will not regret it. So it is awards preview season in the NBA. FanDuel has odds on MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, NBA Finals MVP, Rookie of the Year, a whole bunch of stuff, right? The Cavs do have several guys that are listed as contenders. They're on the board, we will say. And the first one that I need to talk about, obviously, is Donovan Mitchell for NBA MVP. It's a long shot. It's not something I expect to happen. I would anticipate, I will say this, I do think Donovan Mitchell will find himself on MVP ballots again this year. He couldn't last year because he was not eligible. 2 years ago, I believe he finished 6th in MVP. Had a great season his first year in Cleveland. He is listed on FanDuel at plus 12,000 to win the MVP. So FanDuel doesn't think it's very likely. I don't think it's very likely he wins, but I think he's going to be a name that we see at the end of the year. It's like, you know what? That guy had a great season. He belongs like 4th or 5th on my ballot. That's something that I do think is entirely possible we see from Donovan Mitchell this year. Now, the member of the Cavs with the best odds to win an award, it's Evan Mobley, Defensive Player of the Year. He is on FanDuel plus 1,400 to win the Defensive Player of the Year award. That is 4th amongst players. Obviously, a couple years back, he finished 3rd in the Defensive Player of the Year award race. It was his 2nd season in the NBA where he was just terrific. He lost to, I believe, Jaren Jackson Jr. and Brook Lopez, finished 1 and 2 that year. Victor Wembanyama, very heavy favorite for this, but with the 65 game limit to where you have to play so many games to be eligible for these awards, this is the one bet that I think does make some real sense here, where if you think that maybe like that's an ankle sprain, if you think Evan Mobley's going to be healthy, going to play the requisite number of games, he's going to be awesome defensively. Like, you have no questions about that. Plus 1,400 to win that award. I think that's a pretty good value. I really do. Jarrett Allen is also listed there. He's at plus 10,000, which is pretty far down the list. I think for him to be considered, Evan Mobley would have to be injured and miss a significant chunk of time because just the way the Cavs played defensively, and Kenny Atkinson has talked about how they're really not going to change too much on that end of the floor. Evan Mobley is going to be the star on defense. He is. That's how it's going to work for them. So I think if you believe in Jarrett Allen, you're kind of believing Evan Mobley is going to get hurt, which obviously no one wants to see. There was one other award where Cavs had players listed, and it was NBA Finals MVP. Donovan Mitchell had the best odds on the Cavs, which is something that, of course, you would anticipate. It's at plus 4,500, which that was not nearly the long shot I thought it would be. I thought that would be much, much higher. Now, part of it is when sportsbooks have this type of award, everything's a long shot. So they do sort of have to protect themselves a little bit in this case. Evan Mobley was also listed there, as was Darius Garland. Both of those guys were plus 35,000 to win NBA Finals MVP, which I think is probably a fairly accurate place to be. But that's what, and I was a little, I don't know if disappointed is the word, probably not. A little surprised Jaylen Tyson was not on the board for NBA Rookie of the Year. Part of that is, 20th overall pick. I get it. I don't think he's really a contender for that anyways, but I did think we might see him on the board there. But I do want to say thank you to you once again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star review, a nice rating as well. Be a friend. Tell a friend about the Locked On Cavs podcast. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure all of your friends are subscribed as well. Also, check us out on YouTube. Just search Locked On Cavs on YouTube. If you're watching this video right now, do me a favor. Hit that like button, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you know when the latest Locked On Cavs content is coming your way. Game day is tomorrow. We're going to talk about what we're looking for against the Raptors. I can't wait. I will talk to you then on Locked On Cavs.